Hi, good evening, I'm Steve Pank. Athletes, highly trained machines designed to the peak of perfection. They fight, run, synchronized swim, all for our entertainment. But what happens when these monsters of our own creation go bad? Well, tonight we're here to find out. We've gathered together enough evidence to shake the entire world of sport to its very foundations. So brace yourself, because this is what happens when athletes attack. Those of a nervous disposition, be warned, because tonight we'll be bringing you shocking scenes like these from around the world, including the incredible story of the Brazilian superstar, otherwise known as the Animal. The terrible news of what happens when rodeos go wrong. A foul-mouthed dressing room damage done by a bunch of football managers.
Fuck off! Fucking fuck off!
And what it's like to be bitten by mighty Mike Tyson. Evander Holyfield reveals all. Now then, there are many reasons why athletes attack. A bad decision, an unfortunate tackle, not being able to sit on the back seat of the team bus. Whatever the reason, young people must learn that the sports field is not the place for fighting. No, the place for fighting is, of course, behind the bike sheds after school. Lessons need to be learned, because the sad truth of the matter is that for whatever reason, virtually every sport in every nation is infected with a virus of violence. It's a worldwide problem, and this is the global overview. Mexico, April 1st, 1997. A friendly football match between Jamaica and Mexican club side Torres Nazar turns nasty after some bad tackles. Full-scale pitch battle develops, and punches and flying kicks are exchanged. Eventually, some Jamaican players get tired of brawling and go off to the woods to collect sticks and stones to hit the opposition with. Later, the Jamaican coach defended his players, saying they lacked international experience. Allegedly, they would have normally brought their own sticks and stones, but they forgot. Thailand, March 1998. The Thailand national soccer team take on Kazakhstan in a friendly in Bangkok. Unfortunately, their brave but foolish experiment to combine football with kickboxing was not a success. Ireland, June 1996. The Irish have a special term for when a sport gets violently out of control. They call it Gaelic football. This match is between Antrim and Carvan. To the untrained eye, it's difficult to see where the game ends and the punch-up begins. The match commentator, however, is quick to point out that there is no place for such behaviour in the modern game. More's the pity.
Those of a certain age group, certainly those who were born before 1945 who are watching us tonight, will remember the days when that was fair game.
India, May 1995, and some disgraceful scenes of police brutality during the Aga Khan Cup final. This bad tackle was the catalyst for a punch-up between the Indian Airlines team in orange and the Punjabi police team in red. Strangely, the police incident report later stated that the severe bottom bruising sustained during this attack was a result of the offender falling repeatedly onto the officer's hockey stick. Japan, May 1994. Baseball is a sport where they've dispensed with sticks and gone one better and given the players big bats. The only thing is, when a baseball fight breaks out, the players drop the bats and go for it with their fists. Some would say it's a cynical attempt to make what is basically a big, girly game of rounders seem more macho. Here's another example from Venezuela, featuring the Caracas Lions against the Lara Cardinals. The pattern is always the same. First, the pitcher hits the batsman. Then everyone else hits everyone else. After this brawl, 10 players were sent off for being boring and not joining in. Argentina, February 1994. In Buenos Aires, journalists besieged the home of controversial soccer star Diego Maradona after he'd been sacked by his football club. The pint-sized superstar declined to comment, deciding instead to use the journalists for shooting practice with his air rifle. But that didn't deter the RG press, so Maradona turned his hand of God to a little bit of gardening, hosing down the TV crews outside his house. It's always tragic to see a once great figure behaving in such an undignified and tragic fashion. Still, he did cheat us out of the World Cup, so sod him. Boxing, by definition, is a violent sport. Opponents of boxing will tell you that the sight of two men hitting each other for money is degrading. Argue with them on this point, and they'll punch your lights out. Violent it may be, but boxing still has its own code of conduct, a code which some boxers don't understand. Take, for example, the ex-heavyweight champion of the world, Riddick Bowe. He knows that at a press conference, his job is to act mean and threaten his opponent in order to sell more tickets. The one thing he's not supposed to do is take all this bravado seriously. That's Riddick on the right in the white T-shirt, where at a pre-bout press conference, his opponent is Larry Donald. Now, at this point, Donald obviously says something to offend him.
Well, they calling you the best, so when I beat you, then I am champ.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Riddick takes this personally, and after all, who wouldn't?
How you figure that? What? How you figure that?
Bowe went on to win a rather dull bout on points, having won the much more exciting press conference on a technical knockout. So, be warned, athletes can attack when you least expect them to. Another example. When the bell rings at the end of the round in boxing, you have to stop fighting. Simple. We also know that boxing is a two-man sport. Let's take a look at Mr. Bowe in action again. This time in the ring, breaking both these rules with breathtaking ease. Here he is fighting Elijah Tillery. There's the bell. Suddenly, what was a boxing match becomes a tag team wrestling bout. Watch out for Riddick Bowe's manager, Rock Newman, who decides he wants to take on Tillery personally outside the ring. The interesting footnote to this fight was that Elijah Tillery, who was hit after the bell, manhandled out of the ring by his opponent's manager, and stamped on by the crowd, was the one who was disqualified, a decision that must make Lennox Lewis think himself very, very lucky. That decision, and many more like it in the 80s and 90s, has given boxing a bad name over the years, but one fight in particular has gone down in history as the day the fight game hung its head in shame. Saturday night, 28th of June, 1997. It was the early hours of the morning at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. The Mecca of boxing was getting ready to witness the fight of the decade between Iron Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield in Judgment Night 2. After losing his heavyweight title to Holyfield in Judgment Night 1, Mighty Mike was back again in the most spectacular rematch ever seen. It was a fight that would make boxing history for all the wrong reasons. The referee that night was Mills Lane, who remembers nothing unusual about the atmosphere before the fight.
Before the fight, both fighters I thought were very focused. They both had their business faces on. We went in to Tyson first. He was getting taped, and he asked us to wait for that. We got wrapped. After we got through with Mike Tyson, went to Evander Holyfield. He was walking around, singing gospel to himself, very relaxed.
For Evander Holyfield, the fight started well, but all that was about to change as they moved towards the fateful round 3.
The fight with Mike Tyson. Felt that I should have had him out in round 1. Round 2, it was a lot of clinching and tugging and all that. And so round 3, he came out to shoot his best shot. And the fact that he was doing this all, he found that his all wasn't good enough, and I was still standing. And that's when he, seen his opportunity, and he bit my ear. He looked at me and he said, I got him frustrated. I think I have it.
The round gets down to about, I think, maybe 35 seconds left. It was toward the end of the round. And I'm really kind of out of position. I'm kind of behind and to the left of Mike Tyson. Now, I see Mike Tyson's head go down. And the next thing I know, Holyfield jumps up and grabs both ears like this. He says, he bit me, he bit me. So I look at the ear. I can see a tear. I didn't know how bad it was, but I could see a tear. I knew right then it wasn't a punch. It was a bite.
With Holyfield bleeding profusely from the bite, ringside Dr. Flip Hermansky was called into the ring to check the damage.
When I first looked at the ear, I was taken aback. I've never seen an injury like this in 20 years of being ringside. There was actually tissue missing from Evander's ear.
Incredibly, slow-motion images of the incident actually show the piece of ear being spat out.
I felt at this point that while it was a serious injury, that medically the fight didn't have to be stopped.
I said, can he go? Can he fight? And Dr. Omansky said, yep, he can fight. I said, he can fight? He said, yes, he can go, he can fight.
When the referee said box, he came back into it, and he threw some hard shots. And I was able to take him, and I reeled off about 2 or 3 shots and scared him again. And he says, I got to get out of here. And he bit my other ear.
Then I walked to Tyson's corner and said, that's it, man. You're done. You're gone. And then Tyson went kind of crazy, a little bit crazy, and started pushing and punching, and police security came in. But I just think he lost it. I just think he lost it.
So, in a moment of madness, Mike Tyson lost $30 million and gained a 1-year ban. But the story wasn't over yet. Ringside steward Mitch Libernati was working in Holyfield's corner that night.
After the ring had cleared out, I walked across the ring to check everything out, talked to some other co-workers, and we talked about, you know, piece of ear and someone being bit, Evander being bit. And as I looked down below my feet, the piece of ear was there. I was shocked. It was incredible. I remember just feeling, God, I got a piece of his ear. You know, he needs this. And that's all I had thought. It ain't about anything else but getting it back to him. It looked pretty damaged. I mean, you got to figure, there's about 50 people in that ring, and that ear had been trampled on for about 20 minutes. So when I got it, it was pretty dry and pretty flat.
Libernati took the piece of ear to Holyfield's dressing room, but somehow it was mislaid, either lost or stolen.
I believe it was Philadelphia or Atlantic City. A broker said he had bought it from a security guard or an employee for anywhere between $18,000 and $30,000.
So while some were trying to cash in, for one man, the missing piece is neither here nor there.
It's a battle scar. It means more than what a lot of people think. Because, you know, I could have bit him back. I could have made things worse for myself and him. But, you know, I chose to do what God wanted me to do. I truly believe that if we both start biting each other, it would have been a great reason to end the game of boxing.
Now it's time to shout break, but stay with us, fight fans, for more stories of athletic atrocities. Still to come, find out what happens when football managers completely lose it.
You little fucking idiot! Fucking idiot!
And look at your umpires, because Max on the attack.
Answer my question! The question, jerk!
Welcome back to When Athletes Attack. Now then, ask any player what they fear most. It's not the prospect of going head-to-head against a soccer hardman. No, 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 no. It's getting a roasting off the boss in the dressing room at half-time. The position of coach or manager is probably the most misunderstood job in sport. Now, this next segment contains very strong language, which some may find offensive. Stand by, because this is our very own rough guide to football management. As a football manager, your job is to communicate complex technical information to your players as concisely and clearly as possible. Here's manager Barry Fry dishing out some defensive advice.
Fucking Foxy goal back door. Where was your left back? A fucking get left back! A fucking geezer! You never left back, you're going up his arse! Get the fucking out! He's supposed to stop the outside right! Not play fucking handball with you! You don't want his fucking hand held! Get out there and do your own fucking job! Spit it off! Fuck this! You do your job and let other people worry about them! You the old fucking You last down Saturday! What a fucking fairy! You last down again today! Defend the fucking back post, bollocks!
Remember though, debate is healthy and should always be actively encouraged.
28 fucking goals you've cost just because of that, you cunt. Fuck off! Fuck off!
Blaming other people for your own mistakes is essential. A perennial favourite is, of course, the referee. Here's Graham Taylor giving us a masterclass in referee abuse in the match that would end England's World Cup hopes and his career.
That is terrible. You know it, don't you? You know it. You know it. Referee! Should be sent off. Should be sent off as well. Is he going to send him off? He's got to send him off. You know we've been cheated, don't you? I'm a meter.
The international linesman, of course, doesn't speak a word of English, but that doesn't stop our Graham from delivering one last poignant rebuke.
I just saying to your colleague, referee's got me the sack. Thank him ever so much for that one.
Honesty is, of course, the best policy, but beware, sometimes you can be a little too honest for your own good. This is American football coach Jim Moira, who's had a bad day at the office.
First down, we couldn't run the ball, we didn't try to run the ball, we couldn't complete a pass, we sucked. The second half, we sucked. We couldn't stop the run. Every time they got the ball, they went down and got points. We got our ass totally kicked in the second half. That's what it boiled down to. It was a horseshit performance in the second half. Horseshit. I'm totally embarrassed and totally ashamed. Coaching, coaching did a horrible job. The players did a horrible job. We got our ass kicked in that second half. It sucked. It stunk. That's as simple as I can tell you.
Finally, to be a top football manager, you have to make sure everyone knows who's the boss. This is John Sitton, the former manager of Leyton Orient, earning his players' respect through logical argument and reason.
Don't be coming back at me when I'm shouting at you above the crowd and above the next bench. Because I'll run this fucking football club until I'm told otherwise by the fucking circus upstairs. If you come back at me, you'll be off the field and you'll be following Terry down the road. If you come and see me tomorrow, you've got a fortnight's notice. Because that performance is the straw that broke the camel's back. Because you've had two good performances and you think I'm fucking Bertie Big Bollocks tonight. But you won't play you like. So you little when I tell you to do something, and you fucking big when I tell you to do something, and if you come back at me, we'll have a fucking right sort out in here. Alright? And you can pair up if you like. And you can fucking pick someone else to help you and you can bring your fucking dinner. By the time I'm finished with you, you'll fucking need it. Do you fucking hear what I'm saying or not? You see me in the morning.
Ref, umpire, linesman, scum of the earth and fatherless blokes in black. All words to describe sporting officials. Harsh, but many would say fair. This could be the reason then that when athletes attack officials, it can't help but raise a smile. This is one of my favourites. It took place in 1994 in a Spanish third division football match. The home team had just lost 2-1, mainly because the ref, Alcaraz Sapina, had just sent off 4 of their players. Now, to Senor Sapina, his decisions were completely justified. To the locals, however, he had the mark of Satan upon him and therefore must die. Now, the ref did what any man would do in this situation. He legged it across the pitch, off the pitch, up a fence, and into the woods. Senor Alcaraz has now finally changed his identity and nationality, and is believed to be living in Gravesend under the name of Barbara. Yeah, it's a tough job being a sporting official, but someone's got to do it, and if you're daft enough to want to do it, then here's what you can look forward to. When it comes to attacking officials, John McEnroe was probably the master. Despite years of being fined and banned from tournaments all over the world, he just couldn't stop himself from getting angry.
Seconds up, please.
Answer my question! The question, jerk!
Tennis tutted in disgust, but deep down, we all loved it when he lost it. Nobody was safe. McEnroe would take it out on umpires.
Come on! This is absurd! I can't believe this!
The entire crowd. Television cameras. Even drink trolleys if he thought they were looking at him in a funny way. Cricket usually would never resort to such ungentlemanly behaviour. One exception, though, occurred in Pakistan in 1987 when, after one bad decision too many from umpire Shakir Rana, England captain Mike Gatting finally snapped.
Soon we get on, fucking better. No, no, it's all right. Off you go. One rule for one, one for another.
Not exactly an outburst of McEnroe proportions, but they took up so much time during the match exchanging accusations of cheating that the game ran out of time and the result was a draw, which, as any England cricket fan will tell you, is as good a result as we'll get. So well done, Mike. Imagine the scene. You're losing 2-0 in the World Cup and you're down to 10 men because the officials won't let a substitute on. That happened to John Aldridge playing for Ireland in 1994 against Mexico. Aldridge, of course, as the respected senior professional that he is, accepted the decision with quiet dignity.
He'll be sent off before he gets on. And Aldridge eventually has to be calmed down by Maurice Setters.
With all fairness to John, he's got enough experience to know that he can't get away with that sort.
And here comes again with John Sheridan.
You fucking cheat!
When Aldridge was finally allowed onto the pitch, he seemed more interested in continuing to have a go at the officials than actually keeping Ireland in the World Cup. Now, if you put a man called Ken Smalls in charge of an Australian football derby, then you're asking for trouble.
Ken Small, the referee, in the middle of them.
Mr. Smalls sent off the home crowd's favourite player after this incident. Unfortunately for Ken, as the player marched off, the crowd marched on.
The fans going on the field, and Ken Small is in trouble.
One man in a lumberjack show was so incensed he was later arrested and charged with unlawful use of a corner flag and threatening behaviour with a box. So why did it happen? Who was to blame? Well, ask the fan in the street.
You know, what happened today, I'm against violence, but, you know, it wasn't another way. It wasn't another way. It was severe, very severe pressure, you know.
Well, it was the pressure of the game, you reckon? That
From the referee, from the referee. It should not be there in the first place.
Now, as we've seen, normally when an athlete attacks, they break the rules of the game. Usually they're punished for this with a hefty ban or a large fine and told not to do it again. After all, there's no place for fighting in sport, but there is one sport that holds a soft spot for its outlaws, a sport that sometimes can resemble the Wild West on ice. Hockey on ice. It's fast, it's furious, it's a damn silly idea, but millions across the world seem to love it. It's also the only sport on the planet that turns a blind eye to what can only be described as bare-knuckle fighting.
It seems to me that hockey fighting is like, to hockey is like pornography is to motion pictures. It's the dirty little secret.
Dirty perhaps, but not much of a secret when it happens in front of millions of fans every week. The real secret is the fact that the fighting is done by the same few players. Everyone knows who they are, what they do, and where they live. They're known in the game as the Enforcers. 33-year-old Bob Probert plays for the Chicago Blackhawks. He's led a colourful life, pursuing hobbies such as cocaine smuggling, being treated for alcohol dependency and fighting as many hockey players as possible. He's also considered by many to be the unofficial enforcer of the decade.
I always thought that hockey consisted of fighting, and I thought that's the way that you're supposed to play the game.
It may look harsh, but ice warriors like Bob see themselves as enforcers of fair play in the game.
Say one of their players runs one of our players into the boards and hurts them. Then we have to send a message back.
These skating vigilantes, or Charles Bronsons on ice, dish out Death Wish-style retribution for crimes such as slashing, smashing, or even wearing a ridiculous moustache. Enforcers also love to have showdowns with other rival enforcers. Probert's #1 rival in the game is 5'9" Toronto star Ty Domi. A man so mean, he even picks on his own teammates.
Is there anything I wouldn't do on the ice? Well, I'll tell you, there's not too much I would do to win. I'm an aggressive player, I guess, that you know, likes to play the physical game and take care of my teammates.
Probert and Domi have fought each other many times over the years. One man who knows them well is fight connoisseur and TV hockey pundit Stan Fischler.
Time's up. This is Stan Fischler. Keep your eye on the puck. But Ty Domi's strength is that he has the hardest head in the history of hockey, and the strength there is that you can punch him in the head, and the chances are you'll hurt your fist more than his head will be hurt. Bob Probert, he has long arms and big fists. He can grab you with one arm and punch you with the other one.
Although fighting is permitted, officials do have rules about scrapping on the ice. And I don't just mean no hair pulling. No, it's a lot more complicated than that.
An evenly matched fight will allow the players to, fight as long as it's evenly matched. If one player gets a distinct advantage, we'll immediately break it up. If they fall to the ice, we'll immediately break it up. Or when they clinch, we'll break it up. Half the time, you don't even have to break them up as a linesman. You just tap them on the shoulder, and they know they're on their way to the penalty box.
Despite everyone's best efforts, bad injuries do occur on the ice. And this has put a question mark over the future of fighting in the sport.
There have been any number of players whose careers have been ended as a result of fights. Last year there was a fourth liner for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Nick Kyprios. He got hit so hard that he was out cold on his feet. There's this graphic image shown of this man lying face first in a pool of blood.
Nick Kyprios went on to recover from this horrific injury, but has since retired from the game. Despite these incidents, the majority still believe things are just fine the way they are.
If they took fighting out, there'd be a lot of high stickings, and there'd be a lot of elite players getting hurt and run at every game. And you don't want the elite players hurt because they're the guys that sell the game, and we're there to protect those guys.
One of the things you'll hear often is that they need fighting to police the game. Well, I've always argued that there's already a police force there, and that's the people in black and white, the referees.
I'm doing what I love doing, and they're watching, so that's my advice to them is don't watch it.
He is a nutcase, that guy. Right, time to change ends again, but stay with us for more bedtime horror stories from the world of sport. Still to come, say hello to the bad boys of international rugby. And find out what happens when animals attack in the name of sport. Welcome back to When Athletes Attack. Now, rugby, like ice hockey, is a sport where the line between fair and foul play often gets blurred. It's a tough game, a place where grown men can grapple around with each other in the mud in broad daylight without fear of arrest. But sometimes some players go too far, and bingo, you've got a full-scale athletic attack. Now, every country has its bad boys, but there's one nation that has more than its fair share of them. Bosnia, November 1995, and a team representing the United Nations Protection Force take on a local team in a friendly game of rugby to improve relations with the people of Bosnia. Unfortunately, violence soon breaks out on the pitch and the two teams begin a fierce punch-up. What went wrong? Well, the answer could be that the battalion playing for the UN came from a country with the worst international disciplinary record in the game of rugby. France.
I think the French have a very simple philosophy towards rugby union football. They will pick 8 of the dirtiest, filthiest, garlic-eating pigs they can get their hands on. They call them forwards. Then they pick 7 little pretty boys who play behind the scrum, who can all do 100 metres in about 5.5 seconds, and they call them backs. And their whole rugby ethos is the violence and the manhood of the forwards and the beauty and the poetry of the three-quarters. And it's quite a powerful mix, really.
France, a land of culture, style, and most of all, passion, which colours everything the French do, especially rugby. Over the years, they produced some of the finest rugby teams the game has ever seen, but among their glittering successes is a more sinister record. They've had more men sent off in international rugby than any other nation. Why? This is French rugby's most controversial broadcaster and coach, Daniel Herrero.
I would say that toughness is widely accepted in French rugby. It's even glorified, and we don't, unlike our British friends, glorify self-control.
Australia versus France, June 1990. Frenchman Pascal Gallart is sent off for what can only be described as unsportsmanlike behaviour. Rugby may come from posh schools in England, but in France, its roots are more down to earth.
It's quite funny that all the great props come from the Basque Country, you know, which is in deep south, and their national sport is rock lifting. So these are the kind of men you're against. I mean, to them, it's far more important that they dominate their opponent physically. On the pitch, it's me against you, and I'm going to dominate you, and that's it.
The French not only play fierce, they look fierce. Part of the reason for this is because before playing a match, they love nothing more than to beat each other up.
And they have been known to headbutt each other before the games. I mean, often you're going out at the Parc des Princes and you'd look across the way and the French forwards would be bleeding from beating each other up before they went on the pitch, and had a good way of psyching you out, really.
In 1991, Will Carling's England faced the French in the quarter-finals of the World Cup in Paris. It was a hugely important game, and England had a cunning plan up their sleeve. England forward big Wade Dooley.
I think what you've got to realise is England went through a period of losing and losing heavily against the French. So we devised this tactic of winding them up in the press before the game, and hopefully picking out 2 or 3 players that we thought had weaknesses and preying on that, and preying on the French psyche, telling them that they were a violent team, and they tended to listen to that.
England's plan to wind up the French worked. The boys in blue lost the plot and England went on to win the game 19 points to 10. But there were casualties, the worst being Nigel Heslop, who felt the full force of Le Crunch.
We went and picked him up later and dusted him down and made sure he was okay.
In 1992, England returned to Paris again to face the French, and this time Captain Will and the boys were attempting to win the Grand Slam.
Same build-up, wind them up in the press beforehand, go out, try and intimidate, try and get some sort of reaction.
Again, the plan worked perfectly. For the first time in international rugby, 2 players from the same team were sent off in a match. The first was Lascoubi for stamping.
Well, we just wanted to show our pride, but ended up looking like complete idiots. And I can tell you the English remained calm. They saw that the French were losing it, and in a situation like that, the English have a real culture of dominance and superiority.
England won 31-13 as the French fell apart. Vincent Moscato was the second man to be sent off for a headbutt. He was later accused of acting like a madman on the pitch and was banned from the sport for 8 months.
Yeah, I'm not an aggressive person. Obviously, I don't eat with my fingers. Obviously, I wash every day, but have no fear. Obviously, I brush my teeth just like all the English do, and I'm very kind. I don't beat my wife or my kids, and at the end of the day, I'm just nice to everyone.
That was to be the first and last time Moscato played for France. Today, he's taken up a new occupation and can be found on stage in Paris, because like fellow Frenchman Eric Cantona, he's decided to take up acting as a career.
Alas, for your rock, I knew him well. Alas, for your rock, I knew him well. Alas, for your rock, I knew him well.
England notched up a remarkable 8 straight wins against the French in the early 90s, but that hasn't stopped the way the French play the game today.
To play, you know, for the French pack, you really have got to be some kind of man, and that's it. And that's what they go on the field thinking, and that's how they act, and they always have, and I suppose they always will.
Animal balls in sport are often treated like just another piece of sporting equipment to be used and sometimes abused by their human masters. But what happens when the tables are turned and servant becomes master? Well, with four-legged friends like these, who needs enemies? In America, cowboys like to show their superiority over the mighty bull by sitting on top of it and hanging on for dear life for as long as possible. This is rodeo legend Tuff Hedeman making history at the National Rodeo Finals with the longest ever hang-on. Whether Tuff wanted to break the record is another matter altogether, as his hand was trapped in the rope. Still, the record still stands, unlike Tuff. If you like that, then you'll love this. It's the latest craze in the world of rodeo, a game called cowboy poker, which is a variation on chicken, only with a bull. The rules are simple. Sit four incredibly stupid rednecks in a ring with a bull, then tell them the last one remaining gets to marry his own sister. Again. In this session, a clown hilariously leads the bull directly into the table. The bull then spots that one of the men is only wearing a vest. It can't believe it. Confused by his attire, it attacks. Miraculously, the man survives and celebrates his conquest of the bull in only a vest, before getting mowed down by the bull for a second time. Like everyone else, bulls hate a smart ass. Here in Zaragoza, a young Spanish stallion is attempting to show his manhood by running around in a ring with the mighty bull. Obligingly, our bovine buddy helps him do just that. Meet Wolfie the Wolf from Wolves. He's a family favourite and a big hit with the fans. Unfortunately, when his team played Bristol City, he found he was up against his arch enemies, the Three Little Pigs. Tensions began to mount during a penalty shootout. Words were exchanged, leading up to some mascot-style argy-bargy on the pitch. Unfortunately, this story didn't have a happy ending, with all three being escorted off the pitch and out of the ground. Finally, horses, pea-brained running machines that actually enjoy being whipped, or highly intelligent creatures with a passion for toppling their tiny tormentors. Judge for yourself. Now abroad again, this time to Brazil, the home of the beautiful game. And by that, I don't mean darts, no, I mean football. Brazil is, of course, also famous for its nuts. This is the story of a man who combines both national exports perfectly. He's a footballer who's also an absolute nutcase. He's Brazilian international Edmundo, otherwise known as the Animal. Rio de Janeiro, beautiful beaches, blue sky, and heavenly football. To most people, this is paradise, but in this Garden of Eden, there lurks a serpent in the form of a man called Edmundo. Edmundo is an idol to millions of Brazilians. His ball control is legendary, but he finds it a lot harder to control his fiery temper. In the last 6 years, he's been banned from the game for a total of 6 months. This incident alone cost him 40 days.
He's not stable. He's a little temperamental too. Sometimes they get hot easy.
All Brazilian stars have nicknames, and fittingly Edmundo's is the Animal.
If I could compare him with an animal, sometimes I would compare Edmundo with a tiger. And sometimes I would compare him with the most idiot animal in the world, because he acts like that. Sometimes he's genius, sometimes he's an idiot.
In this game against Sao Paulo, Edmundo insults the opposing team's manager. Things went from bad to worse when the Sao Paulo players joined in, resulting in Edmundo slapping Janino and then trying a jab to the jaw of defender Andre. Soon a full-scale riot erupted in which 6 players were sent off, including, of course, the animal. As punishment, Edmundo was later banned for 30 days.
I think if he just play with a careful outside of the field, no doubt he'll be one of the best players in South America.
Falta para o Palmeiras. Roberto Carlos bate forte, o goleiro Ronaldo não segura. Jean Carlos toca para Edmundo fazer mais
In 1995, Edmundo caused a diplomatic incident whilst playing away in Ecuador in the South American Cup. No one knows why he lost it, but for some reason he decided to put the boot in on this TV cameraman. Edmundo ended up spending 2 days under arrest until he agreed to pay $10,000 to the Ecuadorian he kicked.
People say that when Edmundo arrives at the club, there is happiness, and more happiness when he leaves.
So there was happiness all round as Edmundo returned to Rio and joined local team Flamengo. But it wasn't to be a happy homecoming. In another South American Cup tie in Argentina, Edmundo found himself in trouble again. This time, he got a taste of his own medicine with this left-hand clubbing by Argentinian defender Zandona. Teammate Romario was quick to retaliate, a la Jackie Chan, and then all hell broke loose. Finally, the police were called in to restore order, and the match was abandoned. And to make matters worse, after a night out on the town, Edmundo overturned his imported Jeep, ploughing into a Fiat Uno and killing 3 innocent people. He was saved by his airbag, but was disgraced in South America.
I'm very proud to have him as a friend. I mean, he's a great chap, and I think it's very, very important that we support each other during hard times and bad times, as I did with Edmundo. Edmundo often has very hard times, but thank God we're here to help him and recover and get over very difficult moments in his life.
Whilst awaiting trial for the car crash, Edmundo returned to work. He quickly found his form for his new team Vasco da Gama and scored a record-breaking 29 goals in a season to win the Brazilian championships for them. But Dr. Jekyll always turns into Mr. Hyde, and soon Eddie was up to his old tricks again, getting a 4-match ban for this sneaky elbow strike. Despite that, he was picked to play for his country in the South American Cup. Predictably, Brazil won the tournament, but Edmundo let himself down in the final, much to the disgust of the Brazilian manager, Mario Zagallo.
Yeah, I picked Edmundo for the final of the South America Cup, and it was a special game for Brazil since we'd never won the South America Cup away from home. And in that game, Edmundo suddenly decided to punch one of the opposing players.
Following this incident, Zagallo didn't pick Edmundo again for Brazil for 6 months.
Yeah, I took a great risk in deciding to call him up for the Brazil team again for the World Cup in France. I mean, I picked him because of his great skill, obviously not for his bad attitude, but I called in to see him and I talked to him about all the problems he was causing, and he seemed to get a little bit better after that.
At the World Cup in France, the animal only played for 20 minutes in the final once Brazil were already 2-0 down. Subsequently, he blames Zagallo in the press for being corrupted by sponsors Nike.
Yeah, the problems that he causes, they're just a way of life for him. His life is full of highs and lows. I mean, not necessarily on the pitch, but off the pitch.
Recently, Edmundo's problems have just got a whole lot worse. After 3 years waiting, he's finally been charged with manslaughter for his part in the fatal car crash. He's been sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Well, that's it for When Athletes Attack tonight. Remember, 98% of athletes never attack anyone or anything, but there's always that 2% who spoil it for the rest. So till next time, good night, sleep tight, and mind the athletes don't fight.